What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for March 22nd, 2022. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Friday edition. We got a big show. It seems like every Friday our shows get bigger and bigger, but this is no different. Welcome to day 2 of March Madness. Hopefully your bracket is still intact and not as busted as mine. Thanks a lot, Kentucky. And I feel like Coach Cal has been a pain in my ass since the 90s. I've talked a lot this week about Temple basketball. I talked about just how much they meant to me. And there for a while, like there was a good period of time where UMass was my up there with the Cowboys and Giants and Mets as my least or most hated rival, just because of what Calipari did at UMass with Marcus Camby and Lou Rowe and those guys. And then just the whole Chaney thing and whatnot. So I feel like Calipari has been, and UMass, but Calipari specifically has been a pain in my ass since the early days. And the UMass, it makes me think, especially in March, I'm starting off with a rant that has nothing to do with anything. But I was thinking about this when Calipari lost last night, and I remember going to a game at the Liacouras Center at against UMass, and where our student seats were with directly, we were on the opposite end of the court. It was a little bit different, I guess, than what it is now, but it was the opposite end of the court of where the president's box was. So Linda Bruno, who was the A-10 commissioner at the time, happened to be at the game. It was a big game, Temple UMass. Bruiser Flint was the coach. There's your Philly tie. But Bruiser Flint was the coach of UMass. But I remember the 90s, I think they were called the game hats, the white hats that had the team names, and some of them were got a little crazy, like South Carolina just had Cox written across the. But I remember having a UMass one and undoing the stitches on the M, so it said UAss. And I got the idea that I should take a sign into the Liacouras Center that says UAss. So I spent all day doing it, painted it, went really all out on it. Walked in, nobody said anything to me. And as I was walking down to my seats, this was one of those big trifold. That's how I was able to sneak it in. It was the trifold ones, and holding it up directly at Linda Bruno. Of course, security came over and said, you can either leave the game or give us your sign. I'm like, you're kidding me. I was like, can you at least put it as, I was trying to negotiate with the guy. Can you put it in the office and I can come back later and get it? Because I spent so much time. But that's just a random UMass story. But yeah, my bracket is busted. Thanks to Coach Cal. They should have let John Chaney come after you and kick your ass when he had the chance. Rest in peace, Coach. All right. Anyway. Usually don't start off with a rant like that. We may have a lot of new listeners today, and if you are new, welcome. Shout out to Ryan at Philly Goat for a nice little write-up on his weekly emails. Truly, truly appreciate it. So if you're new, welcome. We are glad to have you. Hope you have some fun with us here on a Friday. Usually don't start off with a rant like that, but just, man, that bracket and Calipari's smug face, there's something about him still 30 or 20 whatever years later that still just irritates me from back when he was at UMass. But anyway, as always, as usual I should say, not always anymore, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, what is the best sporting event out there? 78% of you agreed with me and said it was March Madness. We had some people write in the Stanley Cup. There was a few folks that voted for the Super Bowl. The Stanley Cup is fun, but I still think the Stanley Cup is a very niche event where March Madness and the Super Bowl, I think, are great because everybody gets involved and everybody's filling out of brackets. My kids are kicking my ass right now in my bracket. My wife's kicking my ass in my bracket. Everybody I'm in a pool with is kicking my ass. So again, it goes back to Calipari. But I think because everybody gets into it, I think you got to put March Madness, and it's a more than a day event. So I will even put March Madness above the Super Bowl, unless, of course, the Eagles are participating. But as always, thank you for participating in the question of the day and reaching out on the Back to the Future voice and text line. 267-495-8531 gets you in. And I want to apologize for those that voted on Spotify. I did not realize this until today. or yesterday, there's no option to leave a comment. So I've been putting other leave comment, and there's not an option to leave a comment like there is on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. So I do apologize. So we had a handful of others, but they weren't able to leave a comment. So if you want to get your voice heard and let me know what your favorite sporting event is, give a call on the Back to the Future text line or call or text to the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Still struggling with that name because it's new. We just recently named that this week, so we'll get there. But again, shout out to Ryan at Philly Goat, and if you are new, welcome. Be sure to check out the Phillies preview that dropped this week. It's definitely, this was one of the easier ones because going into this season, I've never remember, and I talked about Glenn Mack and Jody Mack talking about this the other last week, but it's pretty much three guys battling for two spots right now. So be sure to check out the Phillies preview. I did mention too yesterday the coming attractions next month for April. We're going to be doing a little unfinished business and taking a look at teams that left some meat on the bone, did not finish the job that they were set out to do. Kind of inspired by the NFL Network's Missing Rings show that they have, but we're going to take a look at the Philly sports teams and those that had unfinished business. And then coming this summer, we're going to do the Ultimate Nickname Tournament. So stay tuned for that. We're in the selection or the war room, the selection committee, trying to figure out what names they're going to make the field of 64. So stay tuned for that, just to have a little bit of fun this summer. All right. Phillies news. Let's go around the city to see what's happening. Whit Merrifield went 1 for 3. Looks like he's ready, and just in case he has to play some extended times. Good to see Johan Rojas go 1 for 3 with an RBI yesterday. Hit a shot right back up the middle. And could this be the start? I think maybe it's starting to click. Kevin Long keeps saying it. So we'll see. I feel the longer that we don't have an announcement about what's going to happen, the more and more that means it's probably going to be Johan in center field, which means likely that Christian Pache is expendable. And I know for some reason, for a guy that it's a role player, bench player, it's very divided. You're either pro Pache or anti Pache, and there's a lot of people that listen that I know you guys are anti Pache. So we'll see. We got less than a week to go before opening day. Christopher Sanchez did not look good yesterday. He said I was not good. He said he feels good, though. So maybe it's just a matter of still working on stuff. He did miss some time because of that flu bug that was going around. But likely, I need him or Tawan Walker to really get it together within the next week or so to figure out what we're going to do. But all of that leads to today's question of the day. And who do you think should be the Phillies center fielder? Should it be Rojas? Should they just let him learn, do on-the-job training? And does the fact that his defense is Gold Glove worthy make up for the fact he hits 180, 190? Will the rest of the team pick up for him? Should it be Pache, or should they move Brandon Marsh and then do a platoon of Whit Merrifield and Jake Cave in left? Which is something, if thinking back to 2008, a lot of it started off that Phillies run. They started off with I don't think Worth started off as an everyday right fielder. I don't feel as though Victorino, when he first started with the team, was the everyday center fielder, and I could be talking out of line, so maybe that's the way to go. But hit up the Back to the Future voice and text line. Let me know what you're thinking. 267-495-8531. Who should be the Phillies opening day center fielder? Rojas, Pache, Marsh, someone else? Let me know. Congrats to Aaron Nola and his wife on having a baby girl. Came just in time for the season. So hopefully that will give him a new sort of focus and sense of motivation. Interesting story I wanted to mention, and just because it was in the paper this morning, But Jason Worth, keep an eye out for this if you're a horse racing fan. He is part owner of a horse that's a favorite to be in the Kentucky Derby named Dornoch. Big horse racing fan. So to see a former Phil, I'll start following him as they go through some of the tune-up races for the Derby. And then the other story is the Phillies are partnering with Comcast Spectacor in a $2.5 billion transformation of the whole complex down there, using some of the current parking. It's going to be restaurants, shopping, hotels, apartments, which is interesting. I don't know if I'd want to live down there, especially on like an Eagles Monday night game if I had to get up for work early. But at a performance stage, don't know what it's going to mean for tailgate. There's a lot of details that still need to be worked out. Where the funding is going to be coming from, because it probably will be privately funded through the Phillies and Comcast. But what about they need to upgrade the subway line? Maybe there's an expansion to the subway line that can go into the Navy Yard, FDR Park. There's a lot of questions, and it's interesting to see. So I want to keep an eye on this story. And if I know how anything goes in the city of Philadelphia, somebody's going to be pissed off and protesting about it. And there's going to be a lot of pushback. And hopefully the city doesn't bungle it like they tend to do a lot of things. Because, I mean, I think there needs to be some sort between SEPTA and the city. There needs to be some sort of expansion to make it easier to get. I don't know. But you guys all know because you've done it. But I don't know what this would mean for tailgating, so I'm anxious to see. But that's the Phillies news. Sixers are in action tonight against the Lakers, 10:30. Even though it's a Friday night, no chance I'm going to be up for this game. Joe, his practices, according to Nick Nurse, he's starting to ramp it up, which means hopefully soon that they're holding firm to that timeline that he should be back in like another 2 to 3 weeks. And I know from what Nick Nurse said, he's getting antsy, Joe is, to get some contact drills, and that's going to really be the keys when he can start playing one-on-one with some contact and even 5-on-5. Flyers won or lost in overtime 3-2 against the Hurricane, but they got the all-important point, which gets them 4 points up now on Washington for the third spot in the Metro Division. And if the season ended today, they would have a 7-game series against the Carolina Hurricanes. Couturier was another healthy scratch, so not sure what's going on with that. But and I know with the captains in hockey it's different, but to me, I mean, it's worked so far. And there has to be a reason, and I mentioned this the other day. You trust the coach that he's making the right decision. What I don't like is the fact that Couturier isn't sure what he needs to do to get back. I think Tortorella should let him know that, but we'll see what happens. They have back-to-back games this weekend, Boston and Florida down at the Wells Fargo Center, so a big, big weekend for the Flyers. Eagles signed Paris Campbell from the Giants. He's a former second rounder, played with the Colts with Nick Sirianni when he was out there. Know that he's fast. I know he's, from a fantasy football perspective, expected more out of him a few years ago when he was with the Colts. Did not deliver, but adding him to that room with the other guys, I'll take it. We'll see. I mean, again, they're bringing these guys in on prove-it deals that kind of fit a certain mold. So you have your speedster guy now. You have Devontae Parker, who's kind of the bigger receiver, the A.J. Brown sort of, or not A.J. Brown, Julio Jones type role. So they're building it. But the biggest thing they need to do, and I will say it until it happens, Howie, get the deal done. Extend Smitty. Let's go. You got to do it. But finally, for the Eagles, what we already knew is official. The NFL is not going to move to ban the tush push. But after seeing Jalen almost get decapitated in the playoff game against Tampa and signing Saquon, I don't want to see as many tush pushes as we've seen. But speaking of Saquon, Philly Goat has the Saquon shirts, the Saquon Squat, the Saquon Fly. They have your needs covered for Philly seasons. Next week, my fans are coming. I cannot wait. I got the fans, the Schmitties, and the Cape Mays. Looking forward to rocking those down at the shore this year. But go check them out for yourself. And I got a lot of the reviews that you see. Obviously, have been good. But my cousin John bought a pair for his girlfriend. Said they are phenomenal. So do yourselves a favor, go buy some fans to match your Saquon shirt, your Phillies gear, whatever you got. They have you covered. While you're there, do yourselves a favor. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery 10% or Jim Montgomery to get 10% off of your order. That'll show Ryan and basically say thank you for sending you this way. But they have you covered. Get the shoes. PhillyGoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, March Madness update. The Drexel Lady Dragons take on the Texas Longhorns today at 3, 16 versus 1. We'll be watching that. Hopefully, Drexel can pull off the mammoth upset. I already gave you my bracket update thanks to Coach Calipari. I still say John Chaney should have had his way with you when he had the chance. All right, sticking with the March Madness theme that we've had this week. And on this day in 2002, Temple squared off against Villanova in the NIT Quarterfinals. Now, usually I would not focus on an NIT, but there is a moral to this story at the end, so stay tuned. But in this game, Temple won 63-57 without Lynn Greer, who sprained his ankle a couple days earlier. David Hawkins led the Owls with 16. My man Kevin Lyde had 12 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Alex Wesby, filling in for Lynn Greer, had 12 points, 6 rebounds. There's a blast from the past, Alex Wesby. Ricky Wright led the Wildcats with 12 points, 8 rebounds. But Wesby was a key part of the defense that John Chaney put in that shut down Gary Buchanan, who was the Wildcats' best player. He had 11 points on 3 of 12 shooting, and that ultimately was the difference in the game. So this was Jay Wright's first season. So Jay Wright's first season on the Mainline ended 19-13. They only went 7-9 in the Big East. Meanwhile, for Temple, they would go on to lose to Memphis up at Madison Square Garden in the NIT semis, and then beat Syracuse 2 nights later for third place. And I really like that the NIT does this, and I really wouldn't mind seeing the NCAA tournament come back with a third place game, just because it's like, I don't know, it'd be good for a good moneymaker. You could even use it as a fundraiser. It's something that the NFL used to do, a third place game in the early pre-Super Bowl days, and they would use it, the proceeds and everything they got, to fund the players' pension fund. So maybe the NCAA, and I know it's kind of unregulated at this point, but maybe they can do something with a third place game where it gets put into an NIL pot or something. But I wouldn't mind seeing it. It'd be a good gambling opportunity. The key would be whether or not the players would be bought in, since a lot of teams have been opting out of like the NIT. You see what happens with bowl games, but I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool. But I talked about this NIT because, to me, this is the intersection of these two programs, Temple and Villanova. If you ever see the supply and demand charts where one team, like one's going up, one's going down, this is kind of that crossing point, because Temple would go on to play four straight more NITs where they made it to the quarters one year. Then it was the second round. Then it was the first round, leading to John Chaney retiring, and the Fran Dunphy era taking over at Temple. And I mean, Dunphy was what he was. I know people love him in Philly. I, for one, am not a huge Fran Dunphy fan. I feel like he did not do much better at Temple than he did at Penn with more resources and accessibility. At some point, you can chalk up some of it. And I know there's some people out there like Fran, but to me, like, you could get to the tournament and lose in the first round at Penn, and it's a good thing. When you were doing it at Temple, one and Dunphy, like that, somewhere it falls on the coach when you're doing it with different teams, different conferences, and things like that. But I digress. This is not a Fran Dunphy bashing session. But meanwhile, Villanova was on the upward trajectory. They'd be in the Final Four within 7 years of this day, and then ultimately win 2 championships and another Final Four before Jay Wright retired. They've become the premier team in the city since this day. And again, it's funny that this day was the NIT, but this is where the two programs sort of passed each other. It was almost like, I don't know, the high point. I shouldn't say high point, but like in Big Five basketball, this was where sort of Temple then that was not the number 1 team in the city anymore. And for all you Nova fans out there, this should be a lesson that maybe it's going to be okay for Kyle Neptune. Jay Wright started off his career with 3 straight NIT appearances himself. And Kyle Neptune is coming into a way more difficult situation where Jay Wright was coming in to a team that had been to a couple NITs before he came over under Steve Lapis. Neptune's coming in, taking over for a team that was in the Final Four. So if I have to, and this is me as an outsider, not necessarily a huge Nova fan, give the man a little bit of slack and let him find his thing. Because I remember people were ready to give up on Jay Wright after 4 straight NITs after Steve Lapis had gone through a string of NITs. So I think just pump the brakes a little bit on Neptune. But on this day, back in 2002, Temple beat Villanova 63-57 in the quarterfinals of the NIT. And a little bit of bonus action today on a Friday. I told you it was a big show. This got me thinking, and if your brain works anything like mine, I'm like, they played in the NIT, but how many times have Big Five teams played in the NCAA tournament? So I looked it up, and I couldn't find any other examples of NIT, but I'm sure at some point LaSalle or St. Joe's or Drexel, somewhere along the line, there was teams played. But in the NCAA tournament, Big Five teams have only played each other 5 times that I could find. And they were all in the 70s. In 1970, Nova beat Temple in the first round. In 71, Nova beat St. Joe's in the first round and Penn in the East Regional. That was the year Nova went to the Final Four. That was later vacated due to, and why can't I think of the guy's name right now? Howard Presley, I think, signed the pro contract with the ABA, and they vacated it. And then in 1972, Penn beat Nova in the East Regional semis, and in 78, Nova beat LaSalle in the first round. And bonus on the bonus, Temple beat Drexel in the 94 tournament in the first round. So 6 times the 6 teams in Philly have played each other, which I find that number to be interesting because I feel like it should be higher than that, but only 6 times. So there you go. But on this day in 2002, Temple beat Nova in the NIT quarterfinals, that cross-section of the trajectory of the 2 teams. All right, finally today, our Philly Sports Women's History Spotlight. Speaking of legends, is Tina Sloan Green, field hockey, lacrosse, and coaching legend in the city. She went to Girls High, where she played basketball, volleyball, and field hockey. From there, she went to Westchester, where she was an All-American field hockey player. She also played on the badminton team, which I don't know why I find that so interesting, but I don't know. I thought it was cool. From Westchester, she was the first African-American to play on the U.S. lacrosse team. She also played 1 year on the U.S. field hockey team. Then she became the first African-American head coach in women's college lacrosse history when she got the head coaching job at Temple. All she did at Temple in 18 years was go 207, 62, and 4, win 3 national championships, including 19-0 in 1988, 29 consecutive wins at one point, 11 straight Final Fours. Oh, and by the way, she also helped coach the field hockey team at Temple, or head coach the field hockey team at Temple for 5 years and brought them to national prominence as well. She's in the Westchester University and Temple University Athletics Hall of Fame. She's in the Lincoln University Hall of Fame because why not? She started the lacrosse program at Lincoln, which is the first women's lacrosse program ever at a HBCU. She also became their first ever basketball coach. So, I mean, there wasn't anything that this lady could not do. She's in the National Lacrosse Women's Sports Foundation and Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, as well as the Chester County Hall of Fame. But wait, there's more. She's the co-founder of the Black Women in Sports Foundation, which inspires Black women to get involved in all aspects of sports, not just playing. And that's on the management side as well as the coaching side, even to a certain extent the ownership side. I'm sure I missed something about her career and her legacy, but I mean, just a phenomenal person who I've had the opportunity on a few times to meet. I took a class with her. It was sort of, I forget whether it was spring break or winter break class I took. It was like a 5-day class where we were 5 8-hour days on racism in college athletics. And really, to be honest, she was an awesome lady and challenged a lot of my thoughts and just what I thought I was and what I thought was right. So really just challenged my thinking and really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I just was never aware of before. And that had nothing to do with sports. That was just her teaching and really just teaching me a life skill, which that was an awesome class to have. And it was a 3-credit class where we worked hard on those 5 days, but it was a great experience and she's an amazing person. But Tina Sloan Green is today's Philly Sports Women's History Month Spotlight. Just an absolute legend in multiple sports, a coach, and just a good mentor and just a person who's trying to make the world a better place. So shout out to you, Tina Sloan Green, today's Philly Sports Women's History Month Spotlight of the Day. On this day, back in 2002, Temple beat Villanova 63-57 in the NIT Quarterfinals. Let's go Drexel Dragon ladies. I'll be rooting for you. I'll have like 8 screens set up anyway, so definitely put them on my main primary focus. Let's go Dragons, beat the Longhorns. Be sure to get in on the Back to the Future voice and text line. Let me know who should be the Phillies starting center fielder. Should it be Rojas, Pache, Marsh, or somebody else I'm missing? When you get in and leave a call or send a text message, let me know what your thoughts are on any of this. Your March Madness. Should the Eagles re-sign Smitty sooner rather than later? What's your take on Paris Campbell? Should Joe even bother coming back? All of that is fair game on the Back to the Future voice and text line. 267-495-8531. Get you in. Welcome and thank you for listening to all our new listeners out there. Like to have a little bit of fun on here, especially on a Friday. It's going to be a rainy one tomorrow, so hopefully you're out and about and able to do something today. Hopefully you're listening on a walk or a run or a bike ride or something. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Friday. Go Drexel Lady Dragons. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.